tripped over the dog. Yo, where are you? We only got Kris Krohn for 30 minutes. What is this? Note? Oh, fudge. Aw, you dumb. Could be a good thing. This is Chris's second story. Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Josh Cybulski, and I'm riding solo today, which is the first in the history of this show. Joining me today, I have a very special guest. He's a lot of things. He's a husband, a father, a real estate mogul, an entrepreneur, a influencer, a sometimes bodybuilder. He is Kris Krohn. How you doing, Kris?
Good, Josh. Glad to be here today.
Awesome. Well, I'm really excited to have you. I've been following your stuff for a long time. You're definitely somebody who has had quite an influence on me. Actually, just before we jumped on, I read a tweet and I'm like, I think I got to share that with Kris in the show at some point in time. So I might do that, pull that up in a few minutes.
All right.
So we are second story. We talk to people who have gone through a major change in their life that sent them down a different path. And for you, Kris, I couldn't do your story justice, so I'm going to give you the floor. So have at it. What is your second story?
My second story was being in my first year of college, married, thought I was going to be a doctor, and already a few months before had already retaken organic chemistry for the second time, and I got a C in the class, and my advisor said, hey, I know that you've dreamed probably your whole short life about being a doctor, but that's not going to happen. And I was very, very disappointed, but at the time I didn't know what else to do with my life, and I had this telemarketing full-time job on the side, which was quite depressing. Because strangely, I was talking to people 30 years earlier that had been to college. They had their degrees. They went into the workforce. They had spent 30 years 401king and IRAing and paying off their house. And they all were financially struggling. And I just thought, wait a second here. I'm supposed to figure out what I'm supposed to do with my life at this young age. I'm supposed to get a degree because my in-laws and my parents will kill me if I don't. There's all this pressure. And then it's just to get a job so that I can be a cog in somebody's machine for 40 years and then retire grossly, not only with less money than I need by a long shot, but having already given maybe my best prime years of my life away. And so I just remember just feeling sick to my stomach at this game of life. But the pivotal moment, and it was a specific moment, was on a day when I felt depressed. I had already done college from like 6 a.m. to noon, raced to my late night job that was going to go till 9 p.m. I was there for an hour. The telemarketing calls were sucking wind, and I just didn't want to be there. And so I took early lunch. I drove home to be with my brand new bride. We'd been married for 4 months. And before I knocked on her tiny little basement apartment door of this really old apartment building, it's probably the cheapest place in town, tiny little studio for $400 a month. And right before I knocked on the door, I had this really bad feeling that something bad had happened. It's like a dark feeling. I knocked on the door. My wife came to the door in tears. She let me in. She backed into the hallway where there was just one can light right over her head. And I could see that her cheeks had been stained with tears, probably from hours of crying. And I thought, oh, her dad died or something really awful has happened. I reverenced the moment and then finally had the courage to speak up and say, what happened? And then she said something that didn't make sense. She said, well, tuition is due in 3 weeks and we can't pay for it. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, that's a problem, right? We're going to have to go into student debt. And I know she hates debt, but why is she crying? And then she said, well, rent is due in 5 days and we already spent this week's paycheck. And I thought, okay. Like that's a bigger problem. Like, do we get kicked out? Like, I don't know what happens. We don't have money. And before I could say anything, she said, I went shopping a few hours ago. And I bought our typical 5 days worth of food. Came to like $28 and we didn't have enough money to pay for it. And the check bounced. And in that moment, I realized this woman is hungry. And I had just let down my best friend. And I felt so small. I felt pathetic. And I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And I didn't know what my career was. But I'll tell you, the reason why that's my second story moment is because I made a decision in that moment. I said, I I'm going to figure out how to never be in this situation ever again. And a couple months later, I met some mentors that had made millions in business and real estate, started learning from them. And by the time I graduated college, I had amassed a small portfolio of 25 homes worth $1.6 million, had a 6-figure residual income. And while all my buddies were graduating to get jobs, I graduated and I would never need to work again. And it was that moment with my wife that changed everything.
Yeah, I've heard your story a bunch of times from you, and it's pretty powerful every time I hear it. It's something that's so relatable to people, especially the time that we're living in now.
Yeah.
So what would you say is the most surprising thing about going from where you were financially, struggling, bouncing checks, to eventually, becoming self-sustaining and, having that residual income? What was the biggest change in your life?
I learned the value of taking calculated risks. I learned that if you're doing something that doesn't work and you tweak it a little bit, if it's a positive tweak, it might only work just a little bit better. But you see, I didn't need a little bit better. I needed something entirely different, which meant that I was going to have to take a crazy leap in my life. And that's what I did. When I started buying real estate, when I had no money and no credit, right? I had nothing. My in-laws didn't support me. My parents didn't support me. My siblings didn't support me. My friends didn't support me. And even my wife was nervous when we bought our first house. And so, I was willing to do what no one else, I think, was for the most part willing to do. And I think that's the first place you got to look when you're looking for a dramatic life difference, is don't look for a tweak. You have to look for something so far outside of your comfort zone. And that's exactly what I started doing.
Did you take baby steps to get there, like a bunch of incremental little steps, or did you start taking big swings right off the hop?
No, my first mentor said, hey, we're going to house hack, but we're going to still do it conventionally. Like, for you to buy a house, you're going to need to do like a 3% down payment. We'll make sure you find you a really good deal. And it took me 14 months to save up $5,000 because I didn't even make $20,000 a year. Like, saving up $5,000 was hard. So the first 14 months felt like the slowest part of the process. But even to this day, when people say, what was it like to transact your 1,000th or 5,000th home? I'm like, actually, it was the 14 months prior to that first home that was everything. I had my eyes laser targeted on saving the money, getting a couple credit cards, staying an extra year at my job to have a 2-year work history. And when we bought that first house, it was worth $150,000. We bought it for $110,000. It was probably the cheapest house in the entire valley. And I got it at this $40,000 discount. And it had a basement apartment that we rented out that covered the whole mortgage. So we went from throwing money away to living for free. We had 3 bedrooms all to ourselves. And I thought, this is weird. They always say that your home is like your biggest expense, but I don't have an expense. And then a year later, I took the equity and bought a second house that, after we rented it out, made $600 a month. And I bought it with $90,000 of equity. And then I used that house to buy the third house. And then I started finding other people with money. We started buying houses. And I think that what I've done is really bold. Like, you take a look at the boldness of, why would you buy a house as a college kid when you should focus on a degree and getting a house later? Or how on earth would you feel comfortable convincing someone to give their money to you just because you've done 3 deals that worked out? That must have been really bold. And in truth, it really was. So I just found myself so motivated and willing, Josh, to do what just people weren't.
Yeah. So that leads me to the tweet I saw that reminded me of you, and I'll read it here. So you're talking about delaying gratification, obviously in your case, saving the money with the eye on buying a house. So this tweet came up. It's kind of interesting, the timing of it. This is from Alex Hermosi. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Alex, probably. Yeah. So his tweet today was, it's a lot easier to say all successful people got lucky than it is to admit you have no ability to delay gratification, handle rejection, or think for yourself.
Yeah. It resonates. It resonates. I mean, for the first 5 years, I didn't own a single luxury anything. But that year I graduated college, I moved into a 10,000 square foot custom built home on the golf course outside of Sundance, Utah, where they do the Sundance Film Festival, in just a beautiful spot. And I'm like, wow, I delayed gratification for 5 years and literally lived like a pauper very joyfully. And then we were able to manifest all that.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Bad Workwear North America.
They're a fashion-forward workwear brand from Australia with a wide selection of workwear for men and women that is not only durable, functional, but it is modern and stylish as well. With items like slim fit work pants, waterproof hoodies, as well as a robust women's line, you're sure to find something that you'll love. They offer free returns and exchanges on all orders, and listeners of this podcast can head on over to badnorthamerica.com, use the promo code SECONDSTORY at checkout to get 10% off their first order. Again, head on over to Bad North America, go treat yourself to some new gear. So other than delaying gratification, what do you think were some of the other things that you did that allowed you to maximize your earning potential versus someone else who maybe, isn't living up to the potential that they have?
I'm a long player. In life, you've got short players and long players, right? Like people that are in sales typically are short players. They're going for that quick buck. They want to make that commission. And then you've got your long players. I'm a long player and I'm a short player, which means I want the money today, but I'm willing to be patient for what it looks like tomorrow. You take a look and a lot of people are like, oh, Kris, you invest in real estate. And I'm like, nah, you're focusing on the wrong thing. That's not like, you're not going deep enough. I'm not a real estate guy. I actually hate most real estate. They're like, well, okay, well, then what's your strategy? They're like, no, you have to go deeper than strategy. Okay, then what is it? Well, it's about the performance of money. It's an ROI. It's a return on investment. You put your money in a 401k and you're going to get an average of 4.2% according to the 20-year study with inflation at 4.1%, which means you're making nothing. You feel safe because you're not taking risks, but you don't realize that playing it that safe for 40 years will guarantee your financial demise when you need money the most. On the other hand, when I put money into real estate, we just completed a 10-year study of my last 2,500 purchases. And my average ROI is over 60% per annum. And the difference between 6% and 60% is like falling 90% short at retirement versus having so much money you could pay for retirement for 100 people. And so for me, it niched down to we got to stop incrementally doing something that is better. And you actually have to do the math if the thing that you're doing is actually going to achieve the goal and get you where you want to be. And so for me, I look at something, I ask, will this actually work or is this going to help? I don't do things that help. I do things that work.
Yeah. Interesting. It's funny to hear you speak about different topics, because if somebody was to just come in and, listen to your YouTube or what have you, they'd probably think you have a lot of, I guess, not necessarily conflicting views, but you're kind of a jack of all trades. And what I mean by that is you're clearly, you love capitalism, I would assume, or at least like it. And also there are some things you talk about that, like some of your worldviews might be what people consider to be like hippie-ish a little bit.
Oh, okay.
And I find that kind of cool. The fact that like you're a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
So like some of the, you talk about like different food choices that you make, and a lot of what you talk about, especially with like food or consumerism and things like that, you tell a lot of uncomfortable truths, to be perfectly honest. So I'll give you an example. The other day you talked about Starbucks in one of your videos, and you said, I don't go to Starbucks. It's a waste of money. And also it's just going to make me feel like junk all day. And that's a very, very uncomfortable truth for people to hear. Ironically, I was in Starbucks line when I saw it. It was like, yeah, it was funny. It was I don't drink Starbucks very often. It was like a treat because it was Father's Day. But it was funny and I played it for my wife, and she's like, oh, he's absolutely right. I was like, yeah, he's telling some uncomfortable truths. But it's funny, like you do have what people, I don't think they could really pigeonhole you into one thing, like being a capitalist or being sort of hippie-ish. Where do you think that comes from, the fact that you do have sort of a lot of different opinions about different topics?
I love life and I love growing. And so I'm fascinated endlessly by like everything. I just like studying things. I love learning. At some point in my life, I had very low energy and I had health problems, and I wasn't going to find the answers through traditional medicine. And I realized how powerful I am at generating my own energy. And so a lot of people, they accuse me of being a very high energy person, sometimes a spaz, or sometimes they can't figure out why I have all this energy all the time. But it's just self-generated. I cultivate it between 4 a.m. and 9 a.m. every morning. It's a 5-hour, very specific routine. And I think the other thing is I only sleep 4 to 5 hours a night, because by the time I'm 80 years old, I want to have remembered at least 2 more decades of life than most people will ever actually get to experience. And so life is precious, and I just want to make the most of it. I wouldn't call myself a capitalist. I know that I like making money, but I like making money to do cool stuff and make memories and give it away. And money's fascinating. I would say rather than a capitalist, I'm a manifest destiny guy, which is more this idea of, well, what is your human potential? And are you living it? Because we're always going to judge ourselves based on whether we are or are not. And so for those little dumb reasons, I don't drink coffee. It's just like, I want to generate my own energy. I don't want to have to drink, X number of cups a day to artificially boost my body.
Yeah. Do you tell in your regular life, your day to day, do you feel like you would tell a lot of uncomfortable truths to people the way you do on social media?
I don't know if I'm really, it's kind of weird for me to hear you say it that way. I don't think they're uncomfortable truths. I just think that they're things that I herald as truth. And so humans operate in different emotions, and those emotions have different frequencies. The highest frequency of all emotions, a lot of people think, oh, that's got to be like peace or love. It's actually authenticity, which is self-truth, which is, can you be honest as you are, or are you a pleaser like 72% of the population? Like, can you be truthful with who you are? And are you okay if people don't like you for who you are? I don't care if people hate me. I don't care if people love me. A lot of people hate me. I don't care. Like, what does that have to do with me? It has nothing to do with me. All I can do is focus on being true to who I am. And well, some people like that. Some people won't. I don't know if I really give a shit either way.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I'm trying to write a book right now. It's my first attempt at writing a nonfiction book. And the first line I have written down is exactly what you're talking about right now with regards to. So the first line is, it took me 40 years to realize that taking shit personally is a waste of time and energy. No one's going to see the world the way I do. No one sees me the way that I do. Yeah. That's literally the first line.
That's actually really beautiful. I love that.
Thanks, man. It's, watching a lot of your stuff, you can tell you're a very authentic person. It's something that on this show we talk a lot about. My partner, Corey, who's obviously not here, him and I have really strived in the last few years to be our most authentic self, especially around our kids. Like, I have 2 daughters. I know you have 4 kids, right?
4 kids, yeah.
Yeah. I want them to see the version of me that is actually me. And I'm sure you feel the same way.
I think that, I think if you had met me 15 years ago, I would have felt a lot more plastic. I actually was coming out of a people pleaser phase, and I cared actually a lot about what people thought. And I would, as a people pleaser, lie. People pleasers don't consider themselves liars, but what they do is they chameleon themselves to be acceptable to other people, because that's more important than being themselves. And when I stepped into that awareness, it became so horrific to me that I just wanted to peel every mask off just till I could find out who I was. And that's actually that really started like a 20-year personal development journey for me, where just being me and loving who I am, faults and all, is far more important than being liked or succeeding or achieving or being significant. Those things just really, they used to matter, right? Oh, I've authored 5 books. I put on 1,000 events. I own 2 private jets. I just bought a helicopter. It's like, who cares, right? Like, it doesn't really matter.
Do you ever catch yourself in moments where you're like, oh, that's not me?
Oh yeah. I definitely have moments where I'm like, oh, I'm in an environment designed to impress. I'm focusing on today I was working on a private equity deal. This company probably has $500 million potential, and I have a chance to be a big part of it. They want to actually sponsor me. They want to put my name on the thing. They want to make me a big part of it. And so, yeah, I step into that meeting. Is there a temptation to want to put my best foot forward and show them everything I am? Yeah. And then I look at that and I'm like, dude, just chill and be you.
Yeah. So I'm going to turn to something that you talked about in a video maybe a week or 2 ago. And this kind of plays into the whole authenticity thing. You made a video about how you don't really read the comment sections of your own videos.
I definitely don't.
I read them. Okay. Some of them are a cesspool. Some of them are hilarious to me. What I was curious about is, does your wife ever read them?
Yeah, unfortunately, from time to time, she does. And she knows, she's like, oh, Kris, I was reading these comments. I'm like, go for it. Like, what do you want to talk about? But I just don't, I don't actually care about defending my character either. You know, the reality is that human beings, we got every flavor of us on the planet. We've got every frequency of us on the planet. And everyone is in a different phase of their life. I personally believe that this is not our only shot on earth, that we're in this evolutionary process. And that means that we've got a lot of opportunities to kind of figure things out, and everyone's at a different stage. So I don't get mad at anyone, whether they're sitting in their evil life, whether they're doing something really amazing, whether it's really divine or enlightened. Just let people be where they're at. So it only makes sense with this many people on the planet that one person is going to watch me and say, dude, that dude just inspired the hell out of me. I'm going to get off my ass and do something. And the next person will say, are you kidding me? That guy's a douchebag. He's probably just going to scam you and take you for every penny you're worth. And I'm like, what do I have to do with it? I can't win if I try to manage, where they're at, because every possible flavor of human exists on the planet.
Yeah, it's so true. We had a guest on maybe about 4 months ago. It was our first big guest. He had he was an influencer, a few 100,000 followers. And after we did the show, he started talking about how he's like, you'll get some haters out of this. And we're like, we're this little show with, no following. And all of a sudden we started getting hate, like people that just disliked what he was saying. And he was like a foodie type, like a fitness influencer. Like there was nothing controversial about what he was, but yet the haters came out. And I was like, oh, this is what he's talking about.
I'll tell you, in the health industry, that is when the haters love to come out the most. They crucify people for having an opinion in health.
Yeah, it's very, it's very like religious. Some of people's belief in food is very religious, and we got to experience some of that. So I want to talk to you, just going back to your original story. One of the things that kind of amazes me about your story, obviously you reached this like big moment that changed your life where you had like this, not a downfall, but like just this rock bottom type of feeling.
Yeah.
Are you familiar at all with the region beta paradox?
No.
So the region beta paradox, basically it's this idea that when situations are sort of bad, we don't really do anything about it. We just sort of, whatever, it'll get better. But when things get really bad, then we spring into action. And when it's almost like it forces us to do something about it. And I look at your situation and like it fits that mold perfectly. Mm-hmm. And I know people who were on the opposite side of you who like financially struggled, but never to the point where they were bouncing checks. It was just always like a scramble to make it to the end of the month. And they just lived like that over and over. And they still do, people that are around our age, like, in their early 40s that still scramble because they never hit that rock bottom.
Yeah. I don't know if you have to hit a rock bottom. I think we're all designed so different. I think I should rather say my real double story, second story moment was when I was 19 years old. And I think the reason why I reacted the way I did as a 22-year-old is because of what happened when I was 19. I almost drowned in the ocean trying to save my sister's life. And I had gone in after her. I was a trained lifeguard. And because of the riptide that was pulling her out very rapidly, my training said, don't go after her. But on the Oregon coastline where we are in Cannon Beach outside of Portland, we had already gone out probably 1/10 of a mile just to get waist high. We were so far from shore, there was no getting help. And so I basically jumped in after my sister, and I made it out to her, and I put her in the proper carry, and I tried to swim us back in, but I could tell that we were actually only being pulled further out to sea. And at some point I was too tired to swim her in. She was too tired to stay afloat. And I had a really powerful moment where my life flashed before my eyes, because I really felt like either I'm going to be here until my sister drowns, or, she'll drown and maybe I'll have a shot of making it back. But when my life flashed before my eyes, I saw a lot of things that I had done in my life that I wasn't proud of. And I had this overwhelming feeling that I hadn't lived yet. And my sister and I were just screaming prayers. That's what we had learned to do as kids. And something very miraculous happened, very humbling. A single non-breaking wave came and carried my sister and I all the way back in until we could stand waist high. And when we walked out of that ocean that day, it was undoubtedly a miracle. And my life had been saved. And it made me very curious and very anxious as to why. And ever since that day, every day, I think I wake up with a little bit of fear and anxiety that says, this is borrowed time. You better make the most of what you're given today. And so there's a desire every day to want to make it magical. There's a desire every day to want to go to the nth Google. There's a desire every day that if I'm going to do something, that I want to do it with my highest level of excellence, because at the end of the day, I'm dead. I might be, I don't know, but I'm just going to assume that I will be. So if this is my last day, I got to make it count.
That's a very powerful story. I have not heard that one before. Do you think that plays into like the energy levels that you do have in the way you live your life? Like coming out of something like that and being like, I don't have a second to waste here.
No, what came out of it was motivation. Like, I feel like I have access to endless motivation. So I never struggle with a lack of motivation, because I went to the one place where people aren't supposed to come back from. And if that doesn't give a person motivation, I don't know what will. Eckhart Tolle wrote this book, A New Earth, and I read it, and I really resonated with this one part where he said the secret to living is dying. And that's what I had experienced. I died. And then by some miracle came back, and everything felt like a gift. And now I just wanted to be present, focused, and I wanted to give, so I've done a lot of really crazy things. I've done everything from marathons and ultra marathons, and I've been able to, travel to 50 different countries in the world, been able to do some really epic stuff. And I really love my life, but it's the motivation that I think has given me the drive to want to explore things and learn things and take my hand at bodybuilding, or, I've got another bodybuilding contest at the end of this year. I'm going into my 16-week cut right now. And it's not fun. Like eating like a bodybuilder for 16 weeks in a row is no fun, but I got all the motivation to do it. I've got the motivation to do whatever I want. And that's within all of us. That's within all of our souls. We just got to figure out how to tap into it. Secret is not to die, just to either mimic it or, find something that can draw that motivation out of you.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I got one more thing I want to talk about, and then we'll let you get out of here. I know you're pressed for time. Your morning routine. This is something that, the comment section is just wild, but I actually have started to mimic my own morning routine. Not quite like yours, but when I saw some of your videos, I was like, okay, I'm going to do the same thing as this guy. I'm not going to get up as early as him, but I'll get up at 5 a.m. and get my workout in immediately. I'm going to read a little. I'm going to meditate a little bit. And I've been doing it for a couple months now. And it really does change your day. It completely changes the way you live your day.
So I call this cultivating energy. And my morning routine started at 6 a.m. And then I loved it. And after years, it turned into 5:30 and then 5. And now it's 4 a.m. And my morning routine, sometimes people don't see the genesis. They just kind of capture us in a freeze frame moment. And right now in the freeze frame moment, I'm that lunatic that has this 5-hour routine every morning. But that 5-hour routine actually covers everything that is most important to me, so that before the day starts, I already know that I can go to bed with a clear conscience and feel really good about my life. So I wake up at 4 and I'm listening to my books on double speed for about 20 minutes, get on the treadmill, and on the treadmill, I've got my bodybuilder, cardio routine. And while I'm doing that, I'm doing my meditation. Single-handedly, meditation is the most important part of my life. It is not prayer. It is literally connecting and speaking and conversing with the divine. And so that lasts for 30 minutes. And that's where I connect my soul to my higher self and God. Then I lift weights with buddies, and we're either doing competitions together, gearing up for, some dirty dash or something really fun. And then after that, I get an hour with my wife for like super deep, intimate connection. And then I get an hour with my kids for super deep, intimate connection. And so by the time 9 a.m. rolls around, I have fed my spirit, I fed my body, I fed my mind, I fed my emotion body, fed my physical body, and then the relationships that mattered most, I connected with me, connected with my wife, my kids, and God. And, by the time 9 a.m. rolls around, it's like, oh my gosh, everything that happens after 9 a.m. is now a bonus, because everything that mattered took place.
Yeah. That's the, I don't know if you know who Sean Whalen is. He's from Utah, though. He talks about the core four, it's body, relationship, mind, and business, I think, are the core four. And it is so true. It's Incredible. I want to get to a morning routine. Maybe not quite like that, but definitely something very, very similar. So thank you for sharing. I appreciate it. We're going to get out of here. Is there anything you want to plug before we do?
If anyone wants to connect more with me, I'm on all the different social channels. So just look up Kris Krohn, or I've written 4 books, bestsellers, that have a lot to do with wealth and just time and organizing your life and trying to figure out how to make the most of your life. And I give all those books away for free. If you go to freewealthgift.com, you'll find my books. You'll find an opportunity to connect with me or my team. And a lot of people are interested in how I get these ROIs and build wealth. And I'm happy to give those wealth hacks secrets away as well. So freewealthgift.com is where people can go to get some free stuff.
Yeah, and Kris and his team, I've talked a lot with Jeffrey, great guy. So that's I very much appreciate you doing this, and hopefully we'll connect again one day. Thanks.
Thank you, Josh. Appreciate you.